I spent 30 years growing the wrong crops for my body, and I did not even realize it until my doctor sat me down and said, "Mark, your blood pressure is climbing, your joints are getting worse, and your energy is dropping like a stone." That was my wake-up call. And you know what turned things around more than any pill or supplement? 20 specific crops I started growing right in my own backyard. Crops that are packed with exactly the nutrients that matter most as we get older. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to play one on camera, but I have been gardening since I was old enough to hold a hoe my father put in my hands. And I've spent the last decade specifically researching and growing crops that support healthy aging. Today, I'm walking you through the 20 most healthy crops every senior should be growing. And I have organized these in a way that builds on each other, so stick around. The last one on this list is the crop that genuinely changed how I think about food as medicine after years of ignoring what was right under my nose. And after we get through all 20, I have got a bonus tip about a simple garden technique that can actually increase the nutrient density of almost everything you grow. Most people have never heard of it. So let me get into this. Here's the thing that ties all of these crops together, and it took me way too long to understand this. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at absorbing nutrients from food. Researchers at Tufts University have been studying this for years. Our gut changes, our metabolism slows, and we need more of certain nutrients like potassium, magnesium, calcium, and antioxidants just to maintain the same baseline health we had at 40. Growing your own food is not just about saving money at the grocery store, though it sure does that. It is about getting the freshest, most nutrient-dense version of these crops possible, picked at peak ripeness instead of shipped across the country 2 weeks before you eat them. My father understood this instinctively, even if he could not quote the science. He just said food from the garden keeps you young. Turns out he was right. So here's what I've learned works, starting with something most of us completely overlook. The first crop on this list is one I ignored for decades, and I'm a little embarrassed about it. Sweet potatoes. Now I know what you're thinking, Mark. Sweet potatoes are not exactly groundbreaking. But hear me out. A single medium sweet potato gives you over 400% of your daily vitamin A, which is critical for eye health as we age. It is loaded with potassium, which helps keep blood pressure in check, and it has a much lower glycemic index than a regular potato, so it will not spike your blood sugar the way a russet will. Here's what changed my mind. I planted the Beauregard variety about 6 years ago on a whim, and I could not believe how easy they were. You start with slips, not seeds, and you plant them out after your last frost when soil temperatures hit at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Give them about 12 inches of spacing in loose, well-amended soil, and they practically grow themselves. I got over 40 pounds from a single raised bed that year, and my wife started roasting them 3 times a week. My doctor actually noticed the improvement in my blood work the following year. Now, if you're in zones 5 through 9, you can grow these without any trouble. Shorter season folks, look for the Georgia Jet variety. It matures in about 90 days instead of the 120 that Beauregard needs. Now that one is about what goes on inside your body, but this next crop does double duty. Kale. And I know kale has become one of those trendy health foods that people put in smoothies and pretend to enjoy. But forget the trend. My father grew kale in his garden back in the 70s before anyone thought it was fashionable, and he grew it for one reason. It is one of the most nutrient-dense crops on the planet. A single cup of raw kale gives you more than a full day of vitamins A, C, and K. That vitamin K is the one that matters most for seniors because it is essential for bone density, and bone density is something we lose steadily after age 50. The variety I swear by is lacinato, sometimes called dinosaur kale. It is less bitter than the curly types, the leaves lay flat so they are easier to chop, and it actually tastes better after a light frost. Plant seeds directly in the garden about 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost in spring or in late summer for a fall harvest. Give them about 18 inches between plants. One thing I wish someone had told me earlier is that kale is a cut and come again crop. You harvest the lower leaves and the plant just keeps producing. I've had single plants go for 8 months straight. The third one I want to talk about is garlic. And this is where things start to get really interesting from a health perspective. Garlic contains a compound called allicin, and allicin has been shown in studies at the National Institutes of Health to help lower LDL cholesterol and support cardiovascular health. But here's the catch that most people miss. You only get meaningful amounts of allicin from fresh garlic. The stuff sitting in a mesh bag at the grocery store, for who knows how long, has lost most of its potency. When you grow your own and crush a clove that was in the ground 20 minutes ago, that is a completely different food. I plant hardneck garlic every October, about 6 weeks before my first hard freeze. Individual cloves go in pointy and up about 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart. Mulch heavily with straw, 4 to 6 inches, and then basically forget about it until spring. You will harvest the following June or July. Each clove you plant turns into an entire bulb. I planted about 80 cloves last fall and pulled out 80 bulbs this summer, which is enough to last me almost the entire year. The Music and German extra hardy varieties are my go-to selections for cold climates. If you are getting value from this so far and you want more straight talk gardening advice for folks our age, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I put out new videos regularly with exactly this kind of practical, no-nonsense approach. All right, let us keep going because we have got some real standouts still ahead. Now, this next one pairs beautifully with garlic in the garden and on the plate. Tomatoes. Specifically, I want you growing paste tomatoes because they have the highest concentration of lycopene of any tomato type. Lycopene is a powerful antioxidant that has been linked in multiple studies, including research from Harvard Medical School, to reduced risk of prostate issues in men and improve cardiovascular health in both men and women. The key detail most people do not know is that lycopene becomes more bioavailable when tomatoes are cooked. So when you grow San Marzano or Roma, paste tomatoes and cook them down into sauce, you are actually getting more of the good stuff than if you ate a raw beef steak off the vine. Plant transplants, after all, danger of frost has passed. Give them at least 24 inches of spacing and support them with sturdy cages or stakes. A single healthy San Marzano plant can produce 8 to 12 pounds of fruit in a good season. Here's one that seems almost too simple to make a difference, but after growing it myself for the last 4 years, I am a total believer. Spinach. Specifically the Bloomsdale long-standing variety. Spinach is loaded with magnesium, and magnesium deficiency is one of the most common nutritional shortfalls in adults over 60. It affects sleep, muscle function, and even mood. The thing about spinach is that it loses up to 90% of its vitamin C within 24 hours of harvest. That number comes from Penn State Extension research, and it completely changed how I think about buying spinach in those plastic tubs at the store. When you pick it from your own garden and eat it that same day, you are getting the real deal. Direct sow seeds about 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost, a ½ inch deep, 1 inch apart in rows 12 inches apart. It bolts fast in heat, so this is a spring and fall crop in most zones. Speaking of crops that do not get enough respect, let me tell you about beets. I hated beets for 50 years. My mother boiled them until they were sad little purple mush balls, and I wanted nothing to do with them. Then about 5 years ago, my wife roasted some fresh from the garden with a little olive oil and salt, and I honestly thought she was serving me a different vegetable. Beets are exceptionally high in nitrates, which your body converts into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide helps relax blood vessels and improve circulation, which is why beet juice has become popular with athletes. But you do not need to juice them, just roast them or eat them. In salads. The Detroit Dark Red is a classic, reliable variety. Sow seeds directly 1 inch apart, ½ inch deep, about 4 weeks before your last frost. Thin to 3 inches apart once seedlings emerge. You can harvest baby beets in about 50 days or let them mature to full size in 60 to 70 days. This next one I discovered by accident after reading an old gardening book I found at a yard sale. Moringa. Now, if you are in zones 9 through 11, You can grow moringa as a perennial tree. The rest of us can grow it as an annual in containers or in the ground during summer. The leaves of moringa contain more calcium than milk, more potassium than bananas, and more iron than spinach, gram for gram. It is sometimes called the miracle tree in tropical countries. I grow the PKM1 variety in large pots that I bring inside before first frost. Start seeds indoors about 8 weeks before your last frost date. Transplant into at least a 15-gallon container with well-draining soil. You can start harvesting leaves once the plant reaches about 3 feet tall. I add them to soups, stir fries, and even dry them for tea during winter. Now I want to be straight with you on this next one because I messed it up for years. Blueberries. Everyone tells you to grow blueberries for the antioxidants, and they are absolutely right. Blueberries have one of the highest antioxidant capacities of any fruit, and research from the University of Cincinnati found that regular blueberry consumption actually improved memory in older adults. But here's what nobody tells you. Blueberries need acidic soil, a pH between 4.5 and 5.5. And if you just stick them in your regular garden soil with a pH of 6.5 or 7 like I did, they will slowly yellow, stop producing, and eventually die. I killed 3 bushes before I figured this out. The solution is simple. Grow them in large containers with a mix of peat moss and pine bark, or create a dedicated bed amended with sulfur to bring the pH down. I grow Patriot for cold hardiness and Sunshine Blue for warmer zones. Each mature bush can produce 5 to 10 pounds of berries per year once established, which takes about 3 years of patience. This one took me 3 seasons to get right, and honestly, I wish I had known the details from day one because it would have saved me a lot of frustration. Peppers. Not the sweet bells everyone gravitates toward, though those are fine. I mean hot peppers, specifically cayenne types. Capsaicin, the compound that makes hot peppers hot, has been studied extensively for its anti-inflammatory properties. A study published in the British Medical Journal even found that regular consumption of spicy foods was associated with reduced mortality risk. I grow cayenne long slim because they are prolific, easy to dry, and you can grind them into powder that lasts all winter. Start seeds indoors 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost, transplant after. Night temperatures stay consistently above 55 degrees Fahrenheit and give them at least 18 inches of spacing. One thing I learned the hard way is that peppers actually produce more fruit when they experience a little stress. Do not baby them with too much nitrogen, or you will get huge bushy plants with almost no peppers. Ask me how I know. Let me shift gears to something most people never consider growing, but absolutely should. Turmeric. Fresh turmeric root contains curcumin, which has been shown in hundreds of studies to have powerful anti-inflammatory effects. The problem with turmeric supplements is that absorption is terrible unless you pair curcumin with black pepper and fat. But when you grate fresh turmeric into your cooking, with a crack of black pepper and some olive oil, you are getting it exactly the way your body can use it. I grow turmeric from rhizomes, which you can order online or sometimes find at Asian grocery stores. Plant them about 2 inches deep in rich, well-draining soil after your last frost. They need a long, warm season, about 8 to 10 months, so in zones 7 and colder, I start them indoors in February in large pots and move them outside when it warms up. Each rhizome multiplies into a clump, and you dig the whole thing up in fall. I got about 3 pounds of fresh turmeric from 6 starter rhizomes last year. Here's one that I grew up eating from my father's garden, and it is only recently that science caught up to explain why it was so good for us. Swiss chard. Chard is absolutely packed with vitamins A, C, and K, plus magnesium and potassium. It is heat tolerant, which makes it the perfect leafy green for summer when spinach and lettuce have long since bolted. The Bright Lights variety gives you those gorgeous rainbow-colored stems, and it just keeps producing all season long. Direct sow seeds, 1 inch apart, thin to 8 to 12 inches, and harvest outer leaves starting about 60 days after planting. While single planting in spring can produce greens from June all the way through your first hard frost. I get more total harvest from chard than from any other leafy green I grow. Now this next crop is one that most seniors walk right past in the seed catalog, and that is a mistake. Broccoli. Specifically, sprouting broccoli varieties like Waltham 29. Broccoli is in the cruciferous family, and it contains a compound called sulforaphane, which researchers at Johns Hopkins have studied for its potential role in supporting cellular health as we age. The trick with broccoli is that once you harvest the main head, most people rip the plant out. Do not do that. Leave it in the ground and it will produce side shoots for weeks, sometimes months. Those side shoots are smaller, but they are just as nutritious. Start transplant 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. Plant them out about 18 inches apart. They prefer cooler temperatures, so fall planting often gives better results than spring in zones 7 and warmer. All right, let us talk about something growing right outside my back door that I would never be without. Rosemary. Most people think of rosemary as just a cooking herb, but research from Northumbria University found that even the aroma of rosemary can improve memory and cognitive function in adults. The carnosic acid in rosemary is a potent antioxidant that crosses the blood-brain barrier, which means it can actually have a direct effect on brain health. I grow the Tuscan Blue variety because it is upright, vigorous, and produces heavy harvests. In zones 7 through 10, it is an evergreen perennial that needs almost no care. For colder zones, grow it in a pot and bring it inside near a sunny window in winter. One plant gives me more rosemary than I can possibly use, so I dry the excess and keep it in mason jars all year long. This next one I started growing because my knees were killing me and a friend suggested it might help. Ginger. Fresh. Ginger root contains gingerols, which have been shown in clinical studies to reduce inflammation and ease joint pain. A study in the journal Arthritis and Rheumatism found that ginger extract reduced knee pain in osteoarthritis patients by about 25% compared to placebo. Growing ginger is similar to turmeric. Plant fresh organic ginger rhizomes about 1 to 2 inches deep in rich soil after your last frost. They need consistent moisture, warm temperatures, and partial shade, believe it or not. I grow mine in 15-gallon fabric pots with a mix of compost and coconut coir. You can start harvesting baby ginger in about 4 months, or let it mature for 8 to 10 months for a full-size harvest. I pull about 2 to 3 pounds per pot each fall, and that lasts me well into spring. And you know what goes great alongside ginger in the garden? Carrots. But not the pale, bland things you get in those little snack bags. I am talking about deep orange Danvers or Napoli types that are loaded with beta-carotene. Your body converts beta-carotene into vitamin A, which supports eye health, immune function, and skin integrity, 3 things that decline noticeably as we age. The key to great carrots is loose, deep soil without rocks. I grow mine in raised beds with a mix that is about 1/3 compost, 1/3 vermiculite, and 1/3 peat moss. Sow seeds a 1/4 inch deep. Keep the surface moist until germination, which takes 10 to 21 days, then thin to 2 inches apart. The critical detail I missed for years is that carrots need consistent moisture during the first 3 weeks, or germination is terrible. I went from 50% germination to over 90% just by covering my carrot rows with a damp burlap cloth until sprouts appeared. This one is so easy to grow, it almost feels like cheating. Green beans. Specifically bush beans like Provider or Contender. Beans are high in fiber, folate, and plant-based protein, all of which become more important for maintaining muscle mass and digestive health as we age. Direct sow seeds 1 inch deep and 3 inches apart after your last frost when soil is at least 60 degrees. No need to start these indoors, they actually resent transplanting. A 30-foot row of bush beans gives me enough for fresh eating plus 20 to 30 quarts of canned or frozen beans for winter. They fix nitrogen in the soil too, so they actually improve your garden while feeding you. All right, now we are getting into the crops that I think are truly game changers, and this is where it gets exciting. Elderberry. If you have not heard of elderberry syrup, you have probably been living under a rock because it has been everywhere the last few years. But here's the thing, elderberry supplements and syrups are absurdly expensive. $8 to $12 for a tiny bottle. You can grow your own elderberry bushes and make gallons of syrup for practically nothing. Elderberries are exceptionally high in vitamin C and flavonoids that support immune function. Research from the University of Sydney found that elderberry extract significantly reduced the duration and severity of cold symptoms. I grow the York and Adams varieties because they cross-pollinate and produce heavier crops. Plant bare root bushes in spring, 4 to 6 feet apart, in a spot that gets full sun and has decent drainage. They fruit in their second year, and a mature bush produces 10 to 15 pounds of berries. One critical warning, though: never eat raw elderberries. They must be cooked or processed into syrup, jelly, or wine first. The raw berries contain compounds that can cause serious stomach upset. The next crop is the one I told you about at the very beginning, and it honestly changed how I think about growing food for health after years of overlooking it. Lentils. Yes, lentils. You can grow lentils in a home garden, and almost nobody does. This absolutely blew my mind when I first tried it. Lentils are one of the most nutrient-dense foods on Earth. They are loaded with folate, iron, potassium, and a type of resistant starch that feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut. Research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition has connected regular legume consumption with significantly lower rates of heart disease and type 2 diabetes, both of which are leading health concerns for adults over 60. Here's why this changed everything for me. I was spending probably $30 to $40 a year on dried lentils at the store, which seemed cheap until I realized I could grow 10 to 15 pounds in a 4x8 raised bed. The variety I grow is Eston green lentils. Direct sow seeds 1 inch deep and 1 inch apart in rows about 18 inches apart in early spring, as soon as you can work the soil. They tolerate light frost, so there is no need to wait until after your last freeze. They are a short season crop, ready to harvest in about 90 to 100 days when the pods turn brown and the plants start drying down. You do not even need to shell them right away. I cut the whole plants, hang them upside down in my garage for a week, then thresh them by rolling the dried plants in an old pillowcase and shaking it. The lentils fall right out. Stored in mason jars, they last for years. My father grew dried beans the same way, but never thought to try lentils. And when I showed him my first harvest, he just shook his head and said, "Well, I will be darned." Growing your own lentils connects you to a tradition of food self-sufficiency that most of us have lost, and at our age, having a pantry full of homegrown nutrient-dense staples is not just satisfying, it is smart. Now, before I give you that bonus tip I promised, let me hit on a few common mistakes I see people our age making with health-focused gardening. The first one is growing everything in full sun and wondering why the leafy greens taste bitter and bolt in 2 weeks. Lettuce, spinach, and most greens actually prefer some afternoon shade in zones 7 and warmer. I wasted 3 full seasons of salad greens before I finally moved them to the east side of my raised beds, where they get morning sun but afternoon shade. The difference was night and day. The second mistake is waiting until something is wrong to amend your soil. I used to only add compost when plants looked unhealthy. Now I top dress every bed with 2 inches of quality compost twice a year, spring and fall, whether it looks like it needs it or not. Think of it like taking your vitamins. You do not wait until you are sick. Healthy soil grows nutrient-dense crops. Depleted soil grows beautiful-looking vegetables that are nutritionally hollow. The third one, and I am guilty as charged on this, is trying to grow too many different things at once and not growing enough of the ones that actually matter for your health. I used to dedicate a whole bed to decorative peppers and novelty squash when that space should have been. Growing more garlic, more leafy greens, more of the crops that actually move the needle on my blood work. Prioritize the crops that match your specific health concerns. If your doctor says watch your blood pressure, Go heavy on beets, sweet potatoes, and leafy greens. If inflammation is your issue, load up on turmeric, ginger, and hot peppers. Be strategic. Now here's that bonus tip I mentioned at the beginning, and this one genuinely surprised me when I first learned about it. You can dramatically increase the nutrient content of many crops through a technique called microgreen succession. Here's how it works. Take any of the crops I mentioned today, kale, broccoli, beets, Swiss chard, and instead of only growing them to full maturity, dedicate one small tray or container to growing their microgreen version alongside your full plants. Microgreens, which are just seedlings harvested at 7 to 14 days old, when the first true leaves appear, contain up to 40 times the nutrient concentration of the mature plant. That number comes from a landmark study by the United States Department of Agriculture. A 10 by 20 inch tray of broccoli microgreens grown on your kitchen counter under a simple shop light gives you a concentrated dose of sulforaphane that would require pounds of mature broccoli to match. I keep 3 trays in rotation on a shelf in my kitchen, sowing a new tray every 5 days. Total cost per tray is about 30 cents in seeds. It takes 5 minutes to sow and about 10 seconds a day to water with a spray bottle. This single habit has added more nutrient density to my diet than almost any other change I've made. And it fills the gap during those weeks when the outdoor garden is between harvests. So look, those are 20 crops, plus that bonus tip that I genuinely believe every senior gardener should have in their rotation. You do not need to grow all 20 this season. Pick 5 or 6 that match your own health priorities, get them in the ground, and build from there. This is not about perfection. It is about making your garden work for your body the same way your body works in the garden. If you found this helpful, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next one, and drop a comment telling me which crop you are going to try first or which one you have already been growing that I should know about. I read every comment, and I learn from you folks as much as you learn from me. Happy gardening, and I will see you in the next one.